Hey guys, welcome back to You Can't Sit With Us. So I set this entire podcast for episode 10 up as a video in this new app that I was trying out, and I couldn't export it. Very, very disappointing, but still. So here we are, recording it again. No video, just voice like the other episodes. I'm too frustrated to try a video again, so I'm just going to do it the way I've always done it. Anyway, so this is episode 10. Welcome back to You Can't Sit With Us. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning before your feet ever touch the floor, before the coffee starts brewing, before you check your phone. Someone quietly slips a backpack onto your shoulders. You don't remember packing it, and you don't even remember putting it on. But somehow, every single morning, it's there. Some mornings it feels light. Other mornings it feels like it's filled with bricks. You carry it while you're getting ready for work. You carry it while you're making dinner. You carry it while you're laughing with your family. You carry it to church. You carry it on vacation. You carry it through sporting events, birthday parties, school meetings, doctor's appointments, grocery stores, and nobody else can see it. From the outside, everything looks normal. You're smiling. You're showing up. You're doing what needs to be done. But no one knows how heavy your backpack feels that day. And after a while, you get so used to carrying it that you almost forget it's there until you're exhausted. I think every one of us has an invisible backpack. Maybe yours is filled with financial stress, or maybe it's grief. Maybe it's a marriage that's struggling. Maybe you're caring for an aging parent. Maybe you're waiting for a test result. Maybe you're carrying loneliness. Maybe you're worried about one of your children. Maybe you're trying to hold your family together while quietly falling apart. Whatever it is, I think we all wake up carrying something. For me, part of what I carry in my backpack is a little boy that my husband and I have the privilege of raising. He's not our son in the traditional sense. He's actually our nephew. God wrote our family story differently than I ever imagined he would. If you would have asked me years ago what my life would look like, I would have never described this. But sometimes God's plans don't look like the ones we would have written. And honestly, I'm grateful for that. He's one of the greatest blessings in my life. He makes us laugh. He sees the world differently. He reminds me every day that God's creativity has no limits. I wouldn't change the fact that he's ours. Not for 1 second. But love has a funny way of making you carry things nobody else sees. My backpack isn't filled with one big thing. It's filled with thousands of little things. It's routines. It's schedule changes. It's wondering how today is going to go before today has even started. It's thinking 3 steps ahead. It's trying to make every transition smoother. It's celebrating victories that most people would never notice, and quietly carrying worries that never make it into conversations. Some days the backpack feels pretty light. And other days, I don't even realize how much I've been carrying until I finally sit down. And maybe your backpack looks nothing like mine. Maybe you're not raising a child. Maybe you've never walked through anything like our family's journey. But I don't think the backpack is unique to me. I think it's part of being human. Because if you love deeply, you carry deeply. And if you care deeply, you carry deeply. And if you've ever stayed awake wondering how someone else was doing, you've carried the backpack. And if you've ever replayed a conversation in your head, you've carried it. If you've ever tried to prepare for every possible outcome, you've carried it. And if you've ever felt responsible for fixing something only God could fix, then you've carried the backpack. And here's what I've realized. The backpack usually isn't heavy because of one big event. It's heavy because of all the little things we keep putting inside. One more worry, one more what if, one more fear, one more responsibility, one more thing we think depends entirely on us. Before long, we're carrying far more than we were ever meant to. And that's why Psalm 23 has become so personal to me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. So I originally pictured that verse as a beautiful dinner table. It's set perfectly. But now I picture myself walking toward the table, still wearing the backpack. The circumstances haven't changed. The responsibilities haven't disappeared. The uncertainty is still there. The enemies are still present. But so is God. And here's what I love. God doesn't stop me before I get to the table and say, come back after you've figured everything out. And he doesn't say, come back when life feels lighter. And he doesn't say, come back after you've unpacked your backpack. He simply says, come. And isn't that exactly what Jesus is saying in Matthew 11? Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I love that verse because Jesus never asks us to pretend the backpack isn't heavy. He simply invites us to stop carrying it alone. I think sometimes we've misunderstood what rest really looks like. We think rest means all of our responsibilities disappear. We think peace comes when life finally settles down. But maybe that's not what Jesus meant. Maybe rest isn't the absence of responsibility. Maybe rest is the presence of God. Maybe peace isn't found because the backpack disappeared. Maybe peace is found because we finally remembered who is walking beside us. Maybe that's the question we need to ask ourselves today. What's actually in my backpack? Because if I'm honest, sometimes I don't even know anymore. I've been carrying it so long, I've forgotten what I packed. And maybe that's true for you too. Have you ever cleaned out an old purse or a backpack and thought, why have I been carrying all of this? Old receipts, expired coupons, broken pens, things you forgot were even there. Things that served a purpose once, but they don't anymore. I wonder if we do the same thing with our hearts. We keep packing things in. One disappointment, one fear, one hurt, one more what if, one more guilty thought, one more expectation, one more responsibility. And because we never stop long enough to unpack it, we just keep carrying it. And I've realized lately, not everything in my backpack belongs there. Some of it is responsibility, but some of it is fear pretending to be responsibility. There's a difference. Sometimes I tell myself, I'm just trying to stay prepared. But if I'm honest, sometimes I'm just anxious. And other times I tell myself, I'm just thinking ahead. But really, I'm trying to control tomorrow before today is even over. Other times I'll say, I'm just being a good parent. But underneath that, I'm carrying guilt for things that were never mine to carry. And maybe you've done that too. Maybe your backpack is filled with trying to make everyone happy, and trying to keep the peace, trying to make sure nobody is disappointed, trying to prevent problems before they happen, trying to hold everything together. The problem is, there's no room left. There's no room for joy, and no room for gratitude, and no room for rest, because we've packed the backpack so tightly, we've forgotten what God wanted us to carry in the first place. And Galatians 6 says something I've been thinking about a lot. Carry each other's burdens. And we usually stop there. But a few verses later, Paul also says each one should carry their own load. I think those verses contradicted themselves originally. But now I think they're teaching us wisdom. Our burdens we're called to help carry. And then there are loads that belong to someone else. One of the hardest lessons I've had to learn is this. Love doesn't mean carrying everything. Sometimes love means praying. Sometimes love means showing up. Sometimes love means being present. But it doesn't always mean carrying responsibilities that don't belong to you. That's been incredibly freeing for me. Because when you love someone deeply, especially someone who depends on you, it's easy to believe everything rests on your shoulders. And I don't think God ever intended that. I think that's why Jesus says in Matthew 11, take my yoke upon you, For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Notice he doesn't say there won't be a burden. He says we'll carry it with him. I've started wondering, how much of the backpack did Jesus actually ask me to carry? Did he ask me to carry wisdom? Yes. Did he ask me to carry love? Absolutely. Did he ask me to carry compassion? Every day. But did he ask me to carry tomorrow? No. And did he ask me to carry every possible outcome? No. Did he ask me to carry guilt for things outside of my control? He did not. And did he ask me to carry the weight of fixing every situation? Definitely a no. Those things found their way into my backpack over time, little by little, without me even noticing. And maybe that's why I love the picture of the table so much, because every morning, before I start my day, I have another opportunity to unpack, to take out the fear and take out the guilt, to take out the pressure, take out the need to control, to take out the lies that tell me, if you don't carry this, everything will fall apart. Then I imagine sliding those things across the table, not because they disappear forever, but because I'm placing them in the hands of the one who can actually carry them. I think that's what prayer really is. Not just asking God to fix things, but unpacking our backpack in front of him, saying, Lord, this is too heavy for me. I've been carrying this one by myself. I don't even know how it got here. Would you take it? And every single time he reminds me, I was never meant to carry it alone. You know, the more I thought about the backpack, the more I realized something. God never asked me to pretend it wasn't heavy. Sometimes I think that's what we believe faith looks like. That if we trust God enough, nothing feels hard anymore. Nothing hurts anymore. Nothing overwhelms us anymore. But that's not what I see in Scripture. I see people who loved God and still carried heavy things. David carried grief, and Moses carried responsibility, and Elijah carried exhaustion, and Paul carried hardship, and even Jesus carried sorrow. The difference wasn't that they never carried anything. The difference was they knew where to take it. And that's what I've been learning. Not perfectly and not every day, but little by little, I've stopped asking, God, can you take my backpack away? And I've started asking, Lord, would you help me unpack it? Because maybe not everything inside belongs there. Some things do. Love belongs there, and compassion belongs there, and responsibility and faithfulness, showing up for the people God entrusted to us, they belong there. But fear doesn't belong there. Shame doesn't belong there. And the pressure to control tomorrow, that doesn't belong there. The guilt that whispers, you're not doing enough, it doesn't belong there. Trying to carry someone else's choices and trying to carry someone else's healing, trying to carry someone else's future, those things were never mine to carry. And maybe you've been carrying things that were never yours either. Maybe you've been carrying expectations, and maybe you've been carrying disappointment. Maybe you've been carrying the need to fix everything. Maybe you carry the weight of making sure everyone else is okay while quietly convincing yourself that you'll deal with your own heart later. Maybe it's time to unzip the backpack. Not because you're weak, because Jesus invites you to. In 1 Peter 5, it says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And I love that verse, not because it's a command, but because it reveals the heart of God. He doesn't say, figure it out. And he doesn't say, carry it a little longer. And he doesn't say, you should be stronger than this. He says, give it to me. Because he cares for you, not just for the people you're carrying, for you. That has changed the way I pray. Some mornings I don't come to God with polished prayer anymore. Some mornings I simply imagine sitting down at the table, unzipping the backpack, taking things out one at a time. Lord, here is my fear. I've been carrying this one all week. And here's my anxiety about tomorrow. I don't need it today. And here's the conversation I replayed 100 times. I'm going to leave that here too. And here's the guilt, the pressure, the exhaustion, the need to have all the answers. I don't want to carry these anymore. Then I imagine something beautiful. I imagine Jesus just gently reaching across the table, not to shame me, not to tell me I should have packed differently, but simply helping me unpack. one thing at a time, one burden at a time, one worry at a time. Because that's what love does. It helps carry what is too heavy. Maybe that's why I keep coming back to this picture of the table. It isn't just where I learn, and it isn't just where I pray. It's where I remember I don't have to leave carrying the same things I brought with me. Some mornings the circumstances haven't changed, the diagnosis hasn't changed, the schedule hasn't changed, the relationship hasn't changed, the uncertainty, it hasn't changed. But I have, because I've spent time with God. And somehow, the backpack doesn't feel as heavy anymore. Not because life became lighter, because I remembered I wasn't walking alone. And that's the promise of Psalm 23. God doesn't promise a life without valleys. He promises his presence in them. He doesn't promise enemies won't exist. He prepares a table in their presence. He doesn't promise we'll never carry burdens. He promises we'll never have to carry them by ourselves. So tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you start solving tomorrow's problems, before you pick up everything that's waiting for you, sit down first. Come to the table, unzip your backpack, be honest about what's inside, and then ask one simple question. Jesus, what do you want me to carry today? And maybe an even more important one. What have I been carrying that you never asked me to? I think you'll be surprised by the answer. Because around this table, grace still has a seat. Peace still has a seat. Truth, rest, hope, they all have seats. And God is still strong enough to carry what you cannot. So if you're listening today and your backpack feels heavier than anyone knows, you are not alone. And you were never expected to be. Everything else, you can't sit with us. I'll see you guys next week.